Hello! So today we are going to do something of an academic exercise in the Black Square Bonanza in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So to save some time, I've already got the Bonanza up and running on the apron at Wickham Air Park. So it's ticking away at 1000 RPM on the engine, warming the engine up for us. We're going to fly to Elstree, but we're going to, in order to do this exercise, we're going to make the weather truly horrendous. So if we spin the camera around to see the rest of the field in the distance, we're going to go and change the weather. So let's pull the weather up. And rather than having live weather, we'll turn the live weather off. We can leave on clear skies, it's not going to make any difference to us really. And we'll go and move the lower limit of the cloud to below ground level. And instead of having 0 coverage, we'll have 100% coverage, which looks quite good, doesn't it? And just to make it even worse, we'll change the density to about 1.5. Yeah, I mean, you could make the density really horrible, so you can only see about 1/4 of a mile. But we'll leave it on about 1.5. That should be good for us. So you can see we can just about see as far as the other side of the field if we really kind of focus on the greyness in front of us. So, in order to make this an interesting exercise, we've got rid of the GPS out of the cockpit and we've just got the basic radios that are an option in the Black Square aircraft. And the real ace in our pack here is the KNS-81 navigation radio. So we're going to be using that today. Okay, so I'm just going to go and check that I've got the alternator on and the battery. I just had a sudden panic thinking I'm going to flatten the batteries here while we're sat here talking. So yeah, the engine's good to go. It's generating electricity. Okay, so we're going to be using this KNS-81, but let me go and have a look at the map first to explain what's going on. Normally, when you're in LittleNavMap, you can see your aeroplane on the map, the little yellow aeroplane down there. So we don't need this anymore. So normally you can see yourself. We're going to turn that off, and we're going to turn our track off. So we are going to be flying and just using LittleNavMap essentially as a paper map, and we're going to draw on it as well because it's going to help us along the way. So we're going to fly towards the Bovingdon VOR, then towards Brookman's Park, and then we're going to go into Elstree. But to aid us here, we're going to fly. I mean, this might not be the good way to do it, so we can press Control Z to get rid of that leg. Maybe it's good to come out at an angle from Brookman's Park, but we'll see this. We'll put some techniques together to aid and abet us in doing that. But the real thing we need to be able to do, using the KNS-81, is figure out where the edge of this runway is. Because look, there's no ILS. So the KNS-81 will help us with this, because we can make a virtual VOR. So if we measure the distance from Brookman's Park down to the edge of the runway here at Elstree, we've got 235 degrees, 9.7 miles. Okay, so we'll program that in to the KNS-81. We'll do it while we're en route, there's no big hurry. So, but our first leg of the route, we'll need to go and program nav1 into 11375. Okay, so first thing we need to check actually is what mode is the HSI in. We want it in nav mode to begin with, not RNAV. We'll use RNAV when we use this special technique later. We'll also go and change the course to the direction we are going for takeoff, which is about 244 degrees, I think it is, at Wickham. And the heading bug, because we'll be flying on heading mode all the way while we talk about things. So there's our heading bug and course set up. And we wanted to change the frequency of nav1, didn't we, to the Bovingdon VOR 11375. So 11375, switch that to active. And it hasn't picked it up yet because we're on the ground, so it's probably can't see. There's something that's simulated really nicely in the Black Square aircraft actually, is if you have any kind of scenery in between you and the VOR, it will impact your ability to pick it up. Okay, so we've got the navigation radio tuned in, so we can go and take off. So before we do that then, let's go and put the nav lights on. Sorry, the taxi lights I should say. And let's go and see what these look like in this dull day. It's quite cool, isn't it, the way it lights up the ground in front of it. So come off the parking brake and start turning to avoid knocking the man off his scooter. And we're going to taxi out to the apron at Wickham Air Park. So we'll do this from inside now. So if I press F and then F12 to reset my head tracking, and then we can use head tracking, which will be really useful to us today. Okay, so we just pull around to the runway. So remember, we're going to be using the autopilot today, and we'll use it with heading mode. And so we'll just go and refresh our memory of where the autopilot is. So turn the parking brake on for a moment. Autopilot is down here. So we're going to be going heading mode. So flight director has come on. And we've got an autopilot engage button over here, and it should do attitude hold, I think, when you switch it on automatically, but we'll see. So we can also go into here, we can arm 2,000 feet, and then it goes for vertical speed. So then we can tell it what rate we would like to climb, but I think it will reset to whatever rate we're at when we engage autopilot, but we'll find that out. Okay, so to begin with, all we're going to concentrate on doing is flying away from Wickham in a sensible manner, and we'll be using obviously the instruments. Let's go and calibrate the altimeter. Actually, I hadn't done that. That's important as well. Or it will become more important when we're on approach to Elstree. Okay, so we're looking good. So off the parking brake, open the throttle up. Be careful of the manifold pressure that we don't overstress the engine. So we're not using flaps for takeoff. We've got plenty of speed and power and a nice long runway here at Wickham. So gently pull up, rotate, gear up. So we need to go 230 degrees at Wickham for noise abatement. You can see Nav1 has just come alive. So we'll, for the moment, we'll put this to 230 just for a bit of realism, and we'll engage the autopilot. So it's chasing the heading bug, it's in heading mode, and it's going at 500 feet a minute. Up to 2,000, so the beep was it's within 1,000 feet of its target, so we're climbing at 1,000 feet a minute now, which it's doing. It's happily doing that, look. It's absolutely rocketing along, actually. So we'll keep an eye on that manifold pressure. And while it's climbing out, we'll go and change the heading bug. So I'm just going to go and do a U-turn, basically. So we're going to change the heading to the opposite of the direction we were going, which was about 60 degrees. And we're going to spin that course round. Now the course is Nav1, remember, which is pointing at 11375, which is the Bovingdon VOR. So when we get it pointing directly at Bovingdon, the CDI will move into the middle. So it's about 60 degrees. What a happy accident that is. So it's probably going to fall right into the middle as we climb onto the... So we're coming up to 2,000 feet, so we can pull the throttle back. We can pull the propeller back a bit. And we can just happily cruise along now. So, looking around the aircraft, did we get a distance? Yes, we get a distance to measuring equipment down here. So we've got 14 miles to run until we get to Bovingdon. Okay, and we're using nav mode on the HSI, so this reflects the nav radios. So let's go and program while we're on our way to Bovingdon. 13 miles to run. Actually, before we do that, before we get onto the KNS-81, let's go and show a technique we can use. So we know if we turn this exactly towards Bovingdon, so we'll keep correcting it. We're following the heading bug, remember. So if we fly 60 degrees, we're going straight towards Bovingdon. So 240 degrees from Bovingdon is the radial we are on. And we are 12.7 miles away from Bovingdon. So if we go and draw on the map here with the distance measure tool, 240 degrees, how many miles was it? 12 miles by the time we've done it. So let's go measure 240 for 12 miles. We are about there, so we can drop a user point on the map and we can put whatever we want on here. We could write the time even. So we were there when we last checked. Obviously on a paper map you might draw a little cross and write the time next to it. Okay, so we're flying along. We're now 11 miles from Bovingdon, going straight towards it. Obviously, if I use the heading bug to show you this, if we turn left a little bit and don't go straight towards Bovingdon, it will illustrate what the CDI does. This is quite a good example, actually. So, we're now going to the left of the track that we were on, and the CDI is moving to the right. So when the CDI line is to the right of the arrow, it means you are to the left side of where you should be. Yeah, and it will get more and more marked. So if we were to fly back across that track, the 60-degree line, or the 240-degree from the VOR, remember we're going to the VOR, so the white arrow is pointing towards it. So if we, by crossing the track, we don't have to keep turning right. We just cross the track we know we want to cross, and we know we're kind of flying across it this way now until the CDI is in the middle, and then we track the change. If you want to do this automatically, you just put the autopilot into nav mode, and it will do it. It will tune into nav 1. But I'm just showing you this manually to illustrate what the CDI actually does, what it means. So now we're back on that 60-240 line. Okay, so we're somewhere along this line. If we take another distance measure, so 7.5 miles by the time we do it maybe. So if we go and measure, we're somewhere along this line at about 7.5 miles away from, so right there. So if we could put another user point in, whoops, I'll do it again. Measure. 7.5, so user point, add, and we could put the time in, so for me it's 21:07 in the evening. So you can see very quickly we went out that way, we came onto the line, we wiggled around a bit, and we're back on the line and we're heading towards Bovingdon. Yeah, we're doing 120 knots. Should we speed up a bit? We're going quite slow, aren't we? I was going quite slow on purpose, thinking it would help. So you can see the airspeed is now coming up, because it would give us more time to explain things. Now, so we're going to come in straight over the top of the Bovingdon VOR, so we need to be mindful of the direction we want to leave it on, so 85 degrees. So if we were to tune 85 degrees now, the aeroplane would actually try to get onto that track. So if you imagine that's probably where it is, if we draw the line here. Yeah, there's your 85 degree line. We're somewhere over here. If we ask it to fly 85 degrees into Bovingdon, it will actually turn left. It won't turn right, because it will want to get to the 85 degree radial. Let's try it. So if I go and put the autopilot on nav mode, so it's following the course, and we'll say 85 degrees please, and the aeroplane is turning left. Because as far as it's concerned, if the aeroplane is here, the track is to the left of us, which is what the CDI is showing. So you notice the little aeroplane diagram here? So we can actually figure out where we are. We could take, even while we're crossing the track here, we could tune nav 2 in and use the other instrument here to figure out where we are. So we could put 11375 into nav 2. So this one will come alive. Can spin the Omni bearing select around. We are about 240, 250, 255 degrees off. So if we then draw away from here at 255 degrees, we were somewhere along that line. But obviously you can triangulate if you have enough time to do it. Obviously we've got the autopilot is now turning. So we were pretty close. We're probably out here, so we can see, look, one mile away. So we were right here when we measured it, and the airplane was already turning. So we're going to go over the top of the VOR, look. So distance, 0.8 miles, 0.7. Now notice what happens. So look at the autopilot mode. It's still on nav mode. We've still got a signal. We're still going towards it, even though the distance is down almost to nothing. It's gone off and it's gone behind us. We've lost nav mode and it won't come back on. But we've still got the signal back. So if we go back to nav mode, we'll continue on the 85-degree radial. And we're now leaving the, if we look at the distance measuring equipment, we're leaving the beacon behind. So the distance is going up again. So we can then fly on towards Brookman Park. So then 117.50. So what we can do to make sure we don't go off course, we can move the heading bug over. So while we're changing the nav frequency, we'll just put the autopilot back on heading mode. And then we'll change the frequency over to Brookman Park, 11750. So we'll go 117 on nav 1, which the HSI is showing, remember, and make that the active frequency. So it's gone to 2, look. It's still on the same line, so the CDI didn't move. And the distance measuring equipment is now counting down the miles until we get there. So that gives us a few minutes now to talk about the KNS navigation computer. So we're somewhere along here flying towards Brookman's Park. Okay, KNS 81. What can we do with it? We can, to begin with, we're going to change its mode. So the outer ring changes the mode. So it's got several modes. We want RNV or RNAV mode. Okay, and then we're going to go and press the data button, and you'll see a highlight change between frequency, radial, and distance. So we're going to choose the frequency of the VOR we want to use, which is Brookman Park, 11750. So let's go and change that, 11750. Then we press data again, and we tell it the radial that we want to project a radio beacon onto. So 235 degrees from Brookman Park. So 235. So two, 3, 5. Then we press data again and we tell it how far away we want to project this virtual VOR. So 9.7 miles. So 7, 8, 9, and then we pull the knob out and we can do the decimals. There we go. So we've configured the radio. We're not using it yet, and we won't until we get to Brookman Park. We've got 9 miles to run. In fact, we'll actually leave Brookman Park on a radial of our choosing to give ourselves time to line up. So if we look at the map here and we project a line out and just guesstimate it, and we want to come out maybe to where this Tobii or Ozot is, maybe. Ozot looks like a good choice, doesn't it? So if we append onto our flight plan to say when we actually get to Brookman Park, let's do a right turn and leave Brookman Park on 205 degrees. So what we've done on the KNS-81 is invent a VOR that doesn't exist, that's right at the end of the runway at Elstree, because Elstree doesn't have ILS. So then we'll fly away from Brookman Park, still on nav mode, but then we'll change to RNAV when we get near Ozot, and we'll turn right towards Elstree. And we'll switch the HSI over to RNAV mode, and it will use what's configured here. So we'll get a reading from a VOR that is pretending to be here. And we can tune the course in and fly in towards it as we would with ILS. The one thing we won't have is a glide slope. So we'll have to use distance to gauge how high to be. So we're now 5 miles out from Brickman Park, and you can see we're still on heading mode and we've drifted slightly. So we can just turn, or we can go for nav mode. So if we go for nav mode on the autopilot, look, the flight director kicks in, says, yeah, you need to be turning left a bit. So it's going to go and pull us back onto the radial that we've got tuned in, the 85-degree radial. So we must have drifted slightly below, and now we're coming back. And we can figure out, look, 4.4 miles away. So if we go measure distance, 4.4, we're probably somewhere about there. So if we add another user point to the map, we could give it the name of the time that we did it, so 21:15. So that's about where we were the last time we read our location. So we're now 2 miles away. When we get to about a mile away, we could change our track, couldn't we, to 205 degrees? Or we could let ourselves fly right over it, then change it, and the airplane will turn right. But the easier way, or I think the nicer way, is to go back to heading mode at the moment. So we'll get the heading pointing in the direction we're going, go to heading mode, wait till we're about a mile away, and then we'll change course for 205 degrees. So although we can read this, we're going to ignore it for a moment. So 1.2 miles, 1.1 miles, a mile. So let's change our course then to 205 degrees. So that would be 180 for south, 190, 205. And then we can turn the course around to 205 as well, so we can chase our actual change of direction. And we'll see what's happened. So we've probably overshot slightly. So it knows now we are travelling away from the beacon. But we're to the right of the 205-degree radial. So all we need to do is tell the aeroplane to go onto an intercept course with that radial. So we're flying away from 1175, which is Brickman Park. So we're somewhere along here, and we're off to the left of the line. So we're over here somewhere. But we're coming back towards the line. So the CDI is coming in, look. We're going almost back on top of the line. So what we can do is just use nav mode so we don't have to think about it. And then we can concern ourselves now with how many miles along that line we are. We want to get to 5 miles along it. And then we can draw this onto the map. So measure distance. So once we get 5 miles out from Brookman's Park, we'll switch to RNAV mode and change our course to 259 degrees, which should hopefully take us straight to the runway. So we're 3.5 miles out at the moment. And we could do this now. If we just go to heading mode, so it's going to track that heading that we're actually going, so we'll stay on the line, and we'll change the course and the RNAV. So we go to RNAV mode, so it's now using the KNS, the pretend VOR, and we want 259 degrees or 260 degrees. So let's go and change the course that we want to be flying into our pretend VOR to 250, 260. We're almost on top of it, we're at 5 miles. So now we go nav mode. And the aeroplane is going to track the KNS 80 reading. But we could do this with heading as well. So let's do that, just for a bit of fun. We'll control it ourselves. So, notice the DME doesn't work. Yeah? So we need to reference this one. Yeah? Although the reason the DME is not working, of course, is because we've got on nav 1 still. If we put it onto RNAV, it's counting down the miles now to the runway. There we go. So that was just shows you how quickly you can slip up. So we're at 2,000 feet. We're only 4 miles out. We're too high. So I'm going to come off the autopilot and start descending. And we can essentially use this like an ILS. So we know we're 3 miles out. We're 1,500 feet. I think the airfield's about 300 feet or 500 feet up. So we can see the fields below us now. So there we go. 2.8 miles out. Can we sit up any further? No, not really. So we're just going to fly in gently. I'm going to put the head tracking on. We are 1.9 miles away and we can just about see the ground in front of us. I'm going to slow down a bit now. We're 1.5 miles away. Gear down. Whoa. That just shows you how quickly you can dive into the floor if you're not looking where you're going. So we're 0.9 miles away. We're still following that track. .6 miles away. Come on, airfield, where are you? Let's put the flaps out. We're still on track. Where's the runway? Where's the runway? It should be right in front of us. No, we've missed it. So we're going to do a bit more power. Going to do an about turn and try and spot the runway. So unfortunately it doesn't look like it's a lit runway either, which didn't really help our cause. And it just shows a small amount out means this becomes incredibly more difficult as you go. So we're going to fly the opposite direction until we're a bit further away. And have another go. There's the water. I know it's nearby here. We've made the weather just too difficult, haven't we? So we're now a mile the other side. So we're going away from the airfield. So let's try this again. So 1.5 miles out. Pretty much on the line. No, we're to the right. should be right in front of us. .4 miles away, we're exactly on the beam. There it is. So you can see 10 miles out, or however many miles it was from the Brookman Park VOR, was just enough that the vagaries of radio navigation meant we could only get in the ballpark, and then it was up to us to do the rest. So a bit of a late landing, but we're down and we're safe. So hopefully, like I said, this is an academic exercise. There's no way you would do this in the real world, but it's something you can do in a simulator to really challenge yourself. So we obviously set atrocious weather up, and we were still able to get into the ballpark at the end of the runway just by following the instruments to an airfield that doesn't even have ILS. Obviously, if we had had ILS, it would have been a lot easier. Good fun though, hey? So let's go and park our aeroplane up and exhale and calm down a bit. But also, I think the thing this underlines today is the whole point about not being scared to not force yourself into a corner and to go around and have another go. If I hadn't seen the airfield, I would have turned around and had another go at come round again. The interesting thing we can do now, though, is go back into LittleNavMap, and I think it actually will have recorded the trek, so we can see our navigation throughout the flight. So let's go and park up around the back of here. Okay. Let's go and have a look then and see how we got on in LittleNavMap. So if we go and turn on the track for the aircraft, which is, where is it? I can never find all the buttons in LittleNavMap, I'm terrible at it. Oh, if we just turn our airplane on, I think it will appear. Jump to the user aircraft. Oh, and it's over here, isn't it? There we go. So there's the actual track we flew. So we were flying along and we were playing around, remember? Remember when I said we were off to one side and where we thought we were was there, look. It was interesting, wasn't it? And then we drifted. And then we took a distance measurement as we were correcting. Then we turned and overshot the turn, came in. And we were off the whole way in. So we had a distance wrong somewhere. So it just shows, even at 10 miles out from the VOR, there was an element of error there on the distance on the KNS-81. But there you go. So it just shows, though, we were able to do it. So the second time we came round, by pure luck, I know obviously you could fly a grid pattern if you really wanted to figure out where you were, but we were guesstimating. So we did a tight turn, we came back, did a wider turn, and that gave us enough to just find the airport at the last moment. But there you go. Without being able to see anything, we were able to achieve that and to, save ourselves. So, a great academic exercise to do in the simulator. Have a go at it yourself. If you've got any of the airplanes that have got the KNS-80, you can do that. Or you could do the same thing just with ILS, which obviously makes the job a lot easier. But there you go. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'll see you again soon.